Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. And it is my pleasure to introduce Glen Little. Glen has appeared on some of our webinars in the past. He is one of the most experienced trainers and coaches when it comes to disciplined agile. And my tagline for Glen is he's just an all-around good guy. He's super helpful to students and customers that he works with, and I'm thrilled to have him back. And as part of this month's theme, we've been focusing on the Agile mindset. And today we've asked Glenn to come and talk a bit about the Discipline Agile mindset and tie that into the Discipline Agile Scrum Master and the Discipline Agile Senior Scrum Master designations. So, Glenn, I will turn it over to you to take it away.
I can do that just as soon as I turn myself off mute. Welcome, everyone. We're going to be talking about the DA mindset and what it means to think in terms of Agile, what it means to be Agile. And of course, it's not a question of whether or not you are doing all the processes. It really is a question of are you thinking in an agile way? And as soon as I get my clicker to work here, I've been around agile a long time. I've been involved in agile in various different forms since the early 80s, and I've worked with Discipline Agile as well as Scott Ambler and Associates for many years prior to moving over and working with Josh here at Process Mentors. I am certified as a coach and an instructor, as well as an instructor, and I am one of 4 Discipline Agile Fellows. And just so that I can also say I have a foot in the PMI camp, I also have my ACP, which I got about 8 years ago, maybe. So I don't remember all the details of the ACP, but I certainly have all of the books associated with all the training for it. So I know a little bit about how PMI works and how it relates to DA. So without further ado, let's jump into what exactly is Agile. Agile is not about the processes, the stages, the ceremonies. Really, Agile is about a way of thinking. It's a different approach completely. And until such a time as you can turn that corner to think in a different way, you're really not going to be able to do Agile. So what exactly comprises Agile? It's a disciplined approach. It's about a way of working that encourages frequent inspection and adaptation. It's all about delivering small, delivering soon, delivering quality. But it's also about leadership. How do we lead our teams? How do we lead our organization? And again, it's a way of thinking. It's about a shared ownership and a shared perspective and about transparency. But also in behind that are things like principles and practices. And actually probably should have changed this to say principles, practices, and guidelines, because in fact, we're going to talk about the DA way of thinking and the DA mindset, which includes those 3 things. Okay, so we're going to dive into more about that. But where did this all come from? What was the beginning of this? Back in 2001, and I'm not sure what the age group is that we have here on the call today, but I remember being at a presentation where somebody came in and said, hey, we're going to do this as an agile way. And by the way, we're not going to deliver all this documentation up front. We're going to evolve it and we're going to ready. And I thought they were crazy. But over the years, I started doing this in 1983 was my first Agile project. So by 2001, I was pretty ingrained, but I didn't think this was going to work in every environment. So basically what happened is 2001, 17 guys got together. They were the thought leaders at the time, and they all did Agile in a different way. They all had different approaches, and they had some dramatically different styles and approaches for Agile. And they couldn't agree on anything except that we managed to get all those egos in a room and they came up with this manifesto. And basically they said, okay, here's a bunch of statements, and we value the stuff on the right, but we value the stuff on the left even more. And those statements were these: individuals and interactions over processes and tools, working software over comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, and responding to change over following a plan. These were great at the time, and they actually reflect the state at that time. The trick is we're 20 years later now. And so some of these are long in the tooth. Some of these are, we no longer have to talk about just working software. It really is about working solutions. So when DA started to work with this quite a few years ago now, they decided to update this, and they came up with these. Okay. Slight differences, still individuals and interactions over processes and tools, but now we're talking about consumable solutions. It's not just about the software, it's about the whole system. It's about beginning to end. And we're no longer talking about customers, we're talking about stakeholders and stakeholder collaboration, because there's more than just the end customer that is at stake for your success. Notice we've also put another one in here at the end, which is transparency over false predictability. All right. Again, transparency is really one of the cornerstones of Agile. It's about letting everybody know where you are, how you're doing, the problems you're encountering, the successes you're having. But this isn't all there was behind the manifesto.
And Glenn,
Right.
before you move on to the principles, Carla asks a question, and she's asking, why has the original Agile Manifesto never been updated? Do you know?
Yeah, I do. It's because you could never get those 17 egos back in a room together again.
There's still a lot of disagreement on what it means to be taking an agile way of working, obviously out in the world.
Absolutely, yes. And again, I don't mean it to be disparaging to those 17 people, but also those 17 people have also gone in different directions.
Right.
And a lot of the stuff that was brought in there, I mean, Crystal and DSM and stuff, those are approaches that you don't hear from anymore because people have just sort of amalgamated down to the simpler approaches.
Right.
DA certainly draws from all of those original approaches, but yeah, the bottom line is that they could never really get back together and agree that, hey, we need to be updating this. And we did approach a lot of those guys and said, how do we get this updated? And when we couldn't get them together to do it, DA just decided to go away and do their own.
Yep.
And so again, we're trying to reflect what the current state is. And behind here, though, okay.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So, but behind here are also principles. Now, the original manifesto came up with 12, and DA expanded that to be 17. I'm going to spare you reading through all of these.
We appreciate it, Glenn.
But I want you to notice, though, that these are all about the approach. These aren't about practices. These aren't about, hey, you have to do these meetings. You have to make these practices. You have to be prescriptive. These are all about the way you're thinking. Stakeholders and developers must actively collaborate to deliver outcomes. It doesn't say how you go about that, but it does tell you that there's a basic principle here that you need to adhere to. And these are really important. But this isn't also the end of the picture. All right. So not only do we have those 9, but we also have these 8, which provide us with a complete 17. And I'm going to read my favorite one here, which is simplicity is the art of maximizing the amount of work not done. Again, it's a philosophy. It's a way of thinking. It's an approach that was not there in 2001 when we were doing pretty much traditional projecting or structured analysis approach. There was lots of other different ways of doing it, but Agile really jumped in and said, no, you need to rethink how you're working. And as a result, they came out with these principles, but that's still not the end of the story, because there were other people, and I give a lot of credit to people like Kent Beck, for instance, who a lot of this came out of XP, which is what are the rights and responsibilities of everyone on the team. And it's a balance. It's really two sides of the same coin. Okay, if you have rights, then you also have responsibilities. It's a lesson in politics that we need right now as well. And I probably shouldn't say that, but anyway, the bottom line is it's the same. It's both sides of the same coin, because rights balances off the responsibilities. So what were those rights? Again, not going to read through a lot of these, but again, it's a philosophy. What are the rights of the people on the team? To be treated with respect, to have decisions made in a timely manner so that we're not holding back the process, to own the estimation process. If you build it, you get to estimate it, right? To have commitments to be honored, and to be commended, nurtured, and supported. It's about a way of thinking. It's about building a team. It's about building a safe environment. And you have those rights as a team member in Agile. But the flip side of that is, if you have rights, you also have responsibilities. And some of those responsibilities are things to produce a solution that meets the needs of the stakeholders, given the resource constraints. You have a right to be able to work well as a team, but you also have a responsibility to deliver as a team. You have the responsibility to share all information, including work in progress. That goes back to the manifesto, where it says transparency is important. Transparency is a foundation of Agile. Okay? To expand your knowledge and skills outside of your specialty. Again, it's about growing your team members. It's about people learning how to become a whole team, how to work together as a team. It isn't about processes and procedures. It's not about tools. It's about, how do we think? How do we become an Agile team? And how do we work well together? All of these concepts, and again, at DA, we struggled with how to pull all of these concepts together, and how do we represent them in a nice, concise way without having to have these pages and pages of slides. And I was pleased to see that when the new training material came out from PMI, that they came out with what they referred to as the DA mindset. And what this does is, it not only has a manifesto, but it also breaks down into, okay, here's the basic principles. This is what we believe in. And based on this is what we believe in, we're going to make you these promises. And in order to fulfill those promises, we're going to use these guidelines to show how we can be successful. So it's a great way to pull this all together. And I'm going to talk just briefly about each of these various different areas. So if we believe in these principles, this is why we do what we do. Okay? We want, our primary goal in all of this stuff is to delight our customers. And in order to do that, though, we need to be awesome. We want to be awesome as a team. We want to be awesome as team members. But context counts. Every time we apply these promises, these principles, it depends on who we are as a team, what environment we're working on as a team. Sometimes we have limitations on how awesome we can be based on the environment we're working on. So context counts. But it also, we want to be pragmatic. We want to do the best we can given the circumstances. What works for us? So it's not just in question of, hey, we need to choose the best way of doing things, okay, in order to be awesome, but we need to do what works for us. It might not work for everybody else, but it needs to work for us, which means that choice is good. Every team should have the choice to be able to determine their way of working. We always want to be looking at, how do we deliver work quickly? How do we deliver small packages quickly of high quality? We need to be looking at optimizing the flow. We also need to organize around, though, products and services. We can no longer afford to deal with enterprise silos. We need to be looking at how do we focus on this particular product and getting quality out to our customers, to our stakeholders. Now, you don't have to do a complete organizational reorg or enterprise reorg in order to do this, but you do need to look at how do we start building teams that are centered around delivering products and services. And we also need to be enterprise aware. We are not an island unto ourselves. Okay. We need to make sure that whatever we're delivering is going to work for the organization. We also need to be aware of, hey, what can we reuse out of the organization so that we don't have to build it ourselves? And again, that's all about how do we get high quality out to the customer, right? Because every time we reuse something, every time we reuse it, we'll make it better. We'll give it back to the organization, and everybody gets higher quality reusable components. Enterprise awareness. Okay. We probably, I think gone are the days when teams can work completely independent. They now need to work with other teams to deliver solutions because the solutions are just bigger. We're no longer talking about a 10-person startup company anymore. We're talking about huge organizations. And you do need to know, are our goals in line with the overall enterprise goals? So where do the promises come in?
Glenn, before you move on, we've got one question I want to bring up, but I also just want to provide a little bit of clarity because I see 2 or 3 questions on. So when Glenn started with the Agile Manifesto and then the original 12 principles that were written to support that, and then how DA evolved it, those 17 principles were the ones tied to the manifesto. These are the DA principles, and there's been 7 of them this year. There was an 8th one that was added. So there is a bit of, it's the same word, principle. Sometimes that gets a little bit confusing. Again, I see a number of questions on that. So that's really the difference between these principles Glenn just covered and then the principles that support the manifesto.
Right.
So, and I've got one question for you before you move on to the next, to the promises. Tom asks, good to finally hear stakeholders, good to hear solution, but do you mean designs to satisfy requirements, which equals the solution or systems engineering?
Sorry, read that again.
Good to hear solutions, but do you mean designs to satisfy requirements, which is going to equal solution or systems engineering?
So really, I'm talking in terms of end-to-end solution. So a bit of both. Yes, we need to be designing to meet the need of the customer. Yes, we need to be using design thinking, and you're going to hear me talk about design thinking in a minute when we start talking about the guidelines. But really, we're talking about solutions which go from end to end. A customer request comes in, and again, value flow, value stream flowing. Request comes in from the customer. How do we get it through our organization to deliver that value back to the customer? So complete end-to-end solutions is what we mean. So that may encompass not just the software, which was where we started back in 2001, but when DA started to look at this, we realized, hey, it could involve hardware, it could have multiple teams, it could have all sorts of integrations issues, it could have data issues, it could have all sorts of things that we need to be looking at. What's the complete solution to meet the customer needs? So yes, the answer is yes, I mean all of those things that you just talked about. Okay.
Questions? Yeah, absolutely.
No. Okay. So the promises are about how we're going to work together. So we talked about the why. Now we're talking about the how. And what we promise here is we promise to create a psychologically safe and embracing diversity. Psychological safety and embrace diversity. And there's a tremendous amount of newsworthy stuff on embracing diversity these days, but this was not a new concept for Agile. All right. This is something that goes back many years about being a safe environment, making sure that everybody can share, making sure that everybody respects each other, and that we embrace the diversity of the team. We also want to be looking, though, at how do we accelerate the value realization, which means how do we deliver quality value to the customer sooner and earlier. Right? We also want to collaborate proactively. Don't wait for somebody to reach out. Get out of your chair and go over and talk to them. Okay. Get out of your team and go talk to the other team that you need to be working with. Make sure that you're dealing with your stakeholders on a day-to-day basis. Collaborate proactively. And again, goes back to the value stream. Make all work and workflow visible. It goes back to the foundations of Agile. Transparency is one of the foundations of Agile. We have to make sure that everything is visible. And making sure that your workflow is visible takes work. It doesn't come by accident. You actually have to sit down and look at how does the request come in? How are we working with it? How are we making sure that we are organizing around products and services? How are we making sure that work is accelerating across the organization and back to the customer? But we also want to make sure we're keeping workloads within capacity. We don't want to be overtaxing the people on the team. Despite the term sprint, it isn't. We're in here for a marathon. We're in here for the long haul. And we can't have people burning themselves out working nights and weekends. What we want to be doing is looking at making sure the team's only pulling in the amount of work they can get done in whatever period it is they're working, whether they're doing it in a continuous delivery or they're doing it in iterations. They still need to be looking at, we're only going to work on the stuff until we get it done. Okay? Limit the work in progress. For those that have been involved in Lean or involved in Kanban, then you'll understand the concept of limiting the work in progress. And that's basically what this is talking about. Let's make sure we're only working, we're not driving our people into the ground, that we actually have some bandwidth in there for them to be able to think about things and deal with problems and deliver quality. And also, we promise to improve continuously. We always want to be looking at how do we get better? How do we as a team get better? How do we as an individual get better? Guided continuous improvement is the term you'll hear throughout all of these courses that we teach. But always be looking at how do we improve continuously? So if that's the why and that's the how, then the guidelines are the what. Okay, what makes us effective? How do we determine whether or not we are effective? Well, first thing we're going to do is we're going to validate our learnings. We're always going to be looking at putting metrics in place. Okay, we're always going to be looking at, hey, if it took us this long to do that type of work, if we expect to be continuously improving, then let's put some metrics in place to find out, are we continuously improving? And going back to, I can't remember who asked, we also want to be applying design thinking. And design thinking is about basically looking at what is it the customer wants and how can we meet that need? What's the best way to meet that need? But we also want to be attending to relationships throughout the value stream. It's not just about making sure that our team is working really, really well. It's about how does our team work throughout the other pieces of the value stream? How do we work with other teams? How do we work with our stakeholders? How do we work with our customers? We always want to be building out those relationships so that we're working well together. Making sure that we're working well with our product owner, making sure we're working with our stakeholders. But you also want to be looking at the other end as well. How do we work with DevOps? How do we work with our release team or our support team? Are we providing everything so that they can also do their jobs? Create effective environments that foster joy. It sounds, the first time I read this, I thought, wow, that's pretty hokey. But the bottom line is that's really what we care about, is we want people to be happy to come into work tomorrow. Okay. We want to have environments where the team has fun working on the products. Okay. I had a woman that I worked with many years ago, actually not that many years ago, but a good number of years ago out on the West Coast at an insurance company. And when she was put on this project, we went in, Scott and I went in and did an interview with all of the people on the team. And she was one of them that said, I have no idea why I'm on this team. I'm 2 years to retirement and I can't wait to get out of here, but they told me to move over here. So I'm here. We were there, I guess, worked with them for a little over a year. And at the end did sort of an exit interview as we left. And she said, I have no intention of retiring. She said, and to my knowledge, she's still there because she said, it's now fun to come into work today now. And, it's just one of those things where she never had encountered that in her many years of her career. And now she decided she wasn't going to retire because she was having so much fun coming into work with the team she was working with. So it is about creating an environment that fosters joy.
So,
Change culture.
Glenn, we're getting really close on time.
Okay.
So what I'd like to say is we've got a couple of, got a couple of questions that we'll have like a mini lightning round. And what I would also like to say is, so Glenn has a few more things that he was going to cover today. And sometimes we never have enough time in these sessions. So he's going to talk about a bit of the pathway, depending on your experience, the certifications you might currently have. And he's got a little map that actually shows a bit of where your starting point might be with respect to the Discipline Agile Scrum Master certification, Discipline Agile Senior Scrum Master, Discipline Agile Coach, which will be coming out targeted April this year. So yeah, Glenn will make a PDF version of all these slides available, and we're going to put a post up on the All Things Discipline Agile forum in the general forum, and we'll include that in the recap email. But I did want to, Glenn, get an opportunity to at least get through some of the questions because we've had a number that have come in. Okay. So the first one, which goes to the mindset, Britta asks, I know there might not be a wrong answer to this, but since we're talking about Agile mindset, can Josh and then Glenn tell me what you think the Agile mindset is in one sentence? So I'll tell you what I think is that it's hard to say in a sentence, but I guess for me, it's when I see team members or I hear team members stop saying that's not my job to saying I can help with that, right? Where we see a shift in just the general thinking where, the team's coming together, people are doing things that are outside of maybe what their titled position is or skill set. So that one sentence or the one answer is that's not my job, transitioning over to, hey, I can help you with that. And Glenn, what do you think a one-liner would be for you?
Wow, it's hard to compress it into one line. I thought Scott did a really good job of creating a slide with the three promises, with the principles, promises, and guidelines. But I would say probably the same. The mindset really is about people collaborating and working together, sharing, being transparent, and working to meet stakeholder needs.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's about as concise as I could get it. But
yeah.
So just 1 minute to run through the map.
Yeah. If you want to do that real quick, and then all the other questions. I see Tom's got a few more. John, it looks like Samuel. We'll also answer those on the forum when Glenn makes the posting. So yeah, take it away, Glenn.
Okay. So I've skipped through a bunch of slides to this map. I just got notice that PMI is taking down their molecule certification page, and
also called the Ferris wheel.
Also called a Ferris wheel, yes. But I came up with this DA training highway because basically there are many entries that you could do to get onto this training highway, and depending on where you are, we recommend that if you're coming in with old skills or stale skills or no skills or no knowledge of Agile, that you go through our boot camp, because it basically deals with all of the background that you're going to need in order to be able to do the DASM easily. If you're coming in as a practicing ACP or CSM, you can go straight into the DASM. The DASM course is about basically taking your CSM and introducing DA and how to make use of DA to be a better Scrum Master. The Senior Scrum Master, which is the next one in line, requires that you have at least 2 years of Agile. You need to be practicing CSM, and it's not necessary to have your DASM if you've got the years of experience in the practice. But I would highly, based on having taught this course, I would highly recommend that you do the DASM first. Okay. What comes next is we also have the DA coaching certificate. Sorry, I got one more here. We also have the DA coaching certificate, which then says, okay, if you want to be a team lead, you want to be an architecture owner, you want to be an agile coach, and you've got 3 years and your DASM, then you can take this course and it will make you a better coach. And then on top of that, we have the DA VSC, which is if you want to be an enterprise transition coach, then you need to be a coach, and then you have to have 3 years experience as a coach, and then you can go in and take this certification. So that's basically what we refer to as the DA training highway.
Yeah, and part of some of the questions and the reason why we wanted to have Glenn talk on this particular topic is we're getting more and more communications. A lot of times it's email or messages on LinkedIn or what have you. But just the questions around moving to an agile way of work and getting into the agile mindset, and training is a really good first step for that. And the way that Glenn's got this laid out here with the various options that you have, and there's more that are beyond what's on here, but these are a lot of the obviously the key ones. So yeah, bridging from where you might be, and you're a PMP, right? We see lots of project managers that are coming to the PMI DA courses because they see not only do they need to understand Agile, and obviously Discipline Agile is a great place for them to start, but we also see a lot of people that are just developers. They've got the title of software engineer, software developer, as well as some of the certified Scrum Masters and so forth. So like I said, Glenn will make this available as a PDF, and we'll also monitor the posting on All Things Discipline Agile to be able to answer not only the questions that are here, but any additional ones that you have. And I'm just going to, Glenn, if you want to stop sharing for just a second, I'll pull up what we've got coming for next week. And so yes, come see us at processmentors.com for any additional questions. This is the forum, the allthingsda.com. It's a community forum that we've been talking about over the past maybe 2 months in these webinars. Glenn and I do have a number of trainings to the DASM, our boot camp, and the DASSM. And next week, I've got a really old friend, Clay Nelson, who is the Vice President of Sales at GitHub. And Clay's had a really impressive career. I knew him back in the days when he worked for Rational Software and then for IBM after IBM acquired Rational Software. And he's going to talk about changing development culture in corporate environments. He's got a lot of visibility into that with his current role. And he's just another fantastic speaker. So please come join us next week for Clay. And Glenn, I'd just like to thank you again for taking your time to be here today, and for not only the time here, but the preparation to put together some thoughts around the Agile mindset and how it ties into the SM and SSM designations. And yeah, as always, really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you all for attending, or if you're watching this on the recordings that we'll put out, please, if you have any questions, let us know. And if you've got any thoughts, put those down as well. That's one of the ways we all continue to learn. So thank you for coming, and see you next week.